beginning our discussion, I would like to address the issue directly. Exactly. If we would look at the sociological data and the Agency of Fundamental Rights of the European Union conducted a survey in 2023 at the beginning of the year, so it was before the events of October, and it surveyed more than 8,000 Jewish people living in Europe, and 96% of them reported that they have experienced any kind, various forms of anti-Semitism in their lives in the past year or so. So it was prior to October 2023. And so, of course, then there is a question of rising political anti-Semitism, and we will get to that. But first and foremost, starting this discussion, I would like to hear all of your takes on what's your opinion, what is the situation in Lithuania now? How would you describe it most generally? And then maybe we could move on asking the questions, are there anti-Semitic, anti-Judean prejudices, religious, cultural, and so on, but is political anti-Semitism really making big gains politically? But let's start with the temperature in the room. So maybe Simonas, you would like to share your thoughts and what you've surveyed in the last few years or so, please.
Thank you, Laurinas. Well, answering to your question, I'd say I will divide into two parts. One is the answer of like a citizen of Lithuanian Republic, simply a person who lives here and works here. So sometimes I think when I see the title about the rising anti-Semitism, I think it's probably not exactly the correct formulation. I think the anti-Semitism was always the part of society. Sometimes it hides somewhere in a gray zone, but usually it stays all the time with us. And the second thing, I will move a little bit to October 7th. Last year, this museum is part of European Association of Jewish Museums. And there was a survey of the European museums that works in the Jewish history culture. And the results tells us that after October the 7th, the numbers of visitors decreased about 38%. So it shows exactly it's not Lithuania's issue, it's a European question that part of the visitors chooses different options of spending time and shows probably different interest in different fields. And on the other hand, we as a museum and as a citizens of Lithuania all the time have to try to invite people, involve people, teach them and provide as many information as we can, because the anti-Semitism, in my personal opinion, is illness. And we have to find the right recipe to heal that illness. So that's our mission, and I would say probably the main purpose of being as a museum dedicated to Jewish history and culture.
Thank you for your insights, and thank you for that important information regarding Jewish museums across Europe. And moving, Simona, to you, is how has your perception been looking at the public sphere in the last 2-3 years or so? I think maybe in the late 2010s there was a sort of a lot of patting ourselves on the back that maybe anti-Semitism is becoming a thing of the past. And now we see, I think, a lot of tendencies returning to public life. So it's very interesting to see it as an intellectual. How do you view this process?
It's, I think, a question of context. I don't think that it would be accurate to talk about Lithuania as something very different from all the other Western societies at the moment. I mean, there are sort of differences because we have our own history and our own relation to the events of the 20th century, the tragic events. But I think overall that rise in anti-Semitism that you mentioned is an indication of larger process, which is something that we are moving into similar direction overall as Western societies as they were in the beginning of the 20th century. There is a clear assault on the current international order, on the Western values, and on democracies. That means that the rise of all the pro-authoritarian movements all across the board, whether you take Europe, whether you take US, the democratic states, how they work. They incite fear, they try to incite hate, and then it leads to violence. And all across European countries and US, we can see that those parties that thrive on those three things, they initially have a form of anti-Semitism as a political strategy. That's how it becomes bigger and bigger problem. For example, you will recall that, for example, in US, during the first term of Mr. Trump in 2017, there was an incident in Charlottesville where there was a march of people who were opposing the destruction of Confederate statues. So it's a story that connects US to its own very tough history with racism. But the tricky part is that those fine people, as the president called them, their slogan going to protest the demolition of the Confederate statues was, "The Jews will not replace us." I mean, what kind of relationship the Jews had there, it's not clear. But it's a strategy of the same forces that try to overthrow the current system and the democratic rule of law, that they employ those narratives that then find a fertile ground to sort of grow into anti-Semitism. And the same, I mean, some parallels you can see also here. There is one political party in the last election that came into power through inciting those sentiments and trying to divide the society and incite fear of the other, and Jews usually are in that group, right? So that's how it works, and that's why I think we have to see a larger context and see Lithuania in that context and what is happening. So it's not connected exactly to the war that started in 2022. It's a broader movement against the current democratic governments and sort of the societies.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of things that in your introductory remarks that we will return to during this discussion. But I would like to now ask Mr. Zingeris to share his perspective on the sorts of social and political processes that have been going on in Lithuania and in Europe in general. What have you noticed, the sort of tendencies or events that you would like to bring your attention to when we talk about anti-Semitism today?
Good afternoon. It's good to see you, everyone, including Madam Ambassador. Of course, first of all, our German friends. We are just talking about catastrophic. I'm usually very soft in my expression, like philologist, but now I'm going to use my political language and distance myself from my party affiliation, distance myself from the CDU. Well, I belong to CDU circle, APP, and go to the more days when this building was built. I was part of Zionist movement, and during the Zionist, the anti-Soviet movement, I belong to active part of this movement. It was an idea to have a continuation of Jewish life, means in the small form. 95% killed, 5% survived, probably 4% left to Israel or to United States and other places, and probably 1% came to the year of liberation from Soviet communist Russian regime. So we took part in that, having idea that we will be bringing Jewish community, will be bringing messages and explaining how was about the world who was sunk and annihilated, murdered. Before 700 years, we have here flourishing Jewish life, and we will explain the contents of Jewish life. Here you are in the former Yiddish theater. I was founder of this museum in '88, and idea was to restore. You see the laughing faces. Tragic mask disappeared. Should be tragic masks actually. And you can imagine here in this room Yiddish performances, Brecht style, with pre-war sharp, ironic ideas. The last performance was about Munich Agreement in Yiddish. Ironic music show by marionettes, how Chamberlain and Daladier sailed Europe to Adolf Hitler. So the idea was in the 90s that we will become immediately part of the Western society with all ingredients of resistance against racism, antisemitism, and will create liberal society. This 35 years of our reconciliation with the past and more like 75 years of German reconciliation with the past was not the same. From Heinrich Böll time, we have in Germany real, authentic German reconciliation. German writers, poets, authentically, not under auspices of American army, but authentically came to idea how to reconcile with the past, what means for Germany establishment of the State of Israel, what means for Germany to be educated, leading Europeans and lead our European society without any element of racist hatred. That happened in enough impressive form in Germany. I'm so glad to see Bundeswehr colleagues. Ich danke Ihnen für Ihre Anwesenheit. Germany means for us that Europe will be safe. I'm not talking about French reconciliation with the past, Dutch and other things. I'm talking about one of the leading forces in Europe, Germany. Lithuanian reconciliation with the past was based on an extremely enthusiastic approach of Zionist people like Sigitas Geda, like Merkinaitė, who were creating with me official statements about Lithuanian collaboration with Nazis. Means for Lithuania was important to go through this border line and to adopt the idea how Jewish people were killed in the places, small towns, how they were killed, how they took before, how they were killed with humiliation and mockery. Actually, the echo of that was on 7th of October, humiliation and mockery. People were raped in front of kibbutzim like Sderot and others. So in this case, how we will stop humiliation and mockery in our society and create solid grounds for understandings between killed Lithuanian Jewry and ethnic Lithuanians, Catholic Lithuanians. How we will reconstruct the trust. I would like to say that now this process is absolutely under question mark. And under question mark. Absolutely sure that this audience is an absolute minority in Lithuania, and absolutely sure that Mr. Žemaitaitis have 200,000, actually that number 200,000 followers is the same number of Jewish people killed in Lithuania. 200,000 Jewish people killed, now 200,000 followers of Mr. Žemaitaitis. So after he was declared by Constitutional Court like a authentic anti-Semite, and he was forbidden to be a member of parliament, he used all possible formats in the villages to reconstruct the old-fashioned, authentic Lithuanian anti-Semitic relations to Jewish neighbor, taking the bad, not good part of Lithuanian legacy. We have good part. We have righteous people in heroic, big number. At the same time, we have terrible part. And he used this lipožytas kopečiom, that's special old-fashioned Lithuanian anti-Semitic tune and other things to create, to recreate those bacteria from anti-Semitism, and that's worked. He's one of the most popular guys, and he's in the coalition. I would like to say thank you. Do we have here the gentleman named Algis Davidavičius? The guy in front of two fantastic demonstrations done immediately after swearing. I was swearing 9 times, but after swearing the new government and new parliament, protesting against building coalition with Žemaitaitis in the government. It was 2 fantastic demonstrations immediately after that, authentically done. Actually, not by Christian Democratic Party, not by Liberal Party of Lithuania, but the authentic people from the streets. It's more or less first, probably one of the first time in Lithuania when we saw authentic demonstration against Žemaitaitis and anti-Semitism, and the guy was making his speech and putting his, he was one of those 3 governmental parties, and refusing from his membership in the party on the scene. On the scene. He will talk today later. So from my point of view, we are in critical phase. Jewish people are actually lonely. I'm sharing all my human and humane and human emotions with the Gaza people who died. This means civil population, but I am not sharing the view that Israel is an aggressor. The people, Israel is a country like Estonia, is defending their right to exist, and that is the war of defense. And from my point of view, and the people are still kidnapped, and from my point of view, people, Jewish people are lonely in the world, what just mentioned by my colleague. I participated in major demonstration in Washington on the Mall, 500,000 people, mostly only Jewish faces. I'm sorry to using this, not my French. To the hell, where are other organizations like Black People Matter, like women organization in the United States? Why Jewish people are actually demonstrating about October the 7th? I'm talking about the demonstration after October the 7th. So Jewish people even more alone, like in the United States, where you have Jewish population, here. We feel loneless here in small number. Antisemitism is growing. And we are very pleased that Germany will be presented here not with only with defense, with umbrella, with auspices against those terrible Russian imperialists, but bringing your reconciliation. We need German reconciliation homeworks, And we need to be taught by German reconciliation history. And I'm so glad to see that the members of the International Commission, and Ronald Račinskas is here, well, he presenting 300 tolerance centers in Lithuania, and they're massively going to Yad Vashem to have a dialogue, and Lithuanian teachers are trying to teach tolerance in provincial middle schools and gymnasiums. So from my point of view, we are lucky. We are not lucky that only in Lithuania we have Žemaitaitis. That's a tragic event in Lithuania, and his popularity is growing, but we are lucky that we have German presence, and German presence means bigger, like German umbrella for Lithuanian independence and statehood. We hope from you to be taught about your experience in reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I think it's the big question, and that needs to be truly addressed when we talk about the situation today is, I think, the things that the great philosopher Hannah Arendt pointed out, that it's this specific transition from religious anti-Semitism in previous times, and what happens in late 19th century and at the beginning of 20th century, anti-Semitism becoming a political force. And so there's a distinction between previous forms of anti-Semitism, and we can find many different forms of anti-Semitic rhetoric or anti-Semitic prejudices, stereotypes, Christian, Muslim, pagan, so on. There's a lot of that in history, but the weaponization of anti-Semitism and using it as a rallying platform, as a political platform, is one of the things that happen in quite recent modernity. And so now looking at the situation here in Lithuania, I was absolutely, well, the correct word would be appalled when member of parliament of the ruling coalition, who is the head of the human rights committee, in an interview to the public broadcaster said, well, I don't think that Mr. Žemaitaitis' anti-Semitism is political. I think it's just, you know, stereotypes shared by many people, but it's not political. If a person is elected and is kept on media air constantly because of his anti-Semitic remarks, because of very specific references to anti-Semitic violence in the past in this country, and then, you know, and he's not just any parliament member, he's the head of the Human Rights Committee, says that this is not political, then I have to look at Simona, who is the political philosopher here, to, okay, let's look at the definitions. Would Hannah Arendt and similar theoreticians describe what is happening as political anti-Semitism? Because for me, from the sort of a more mundane and obvious point of view, it is political because he is in politics. He's an elected member of parliament. He's in part of the ruling coalition. So to say that it's not political, for me, it's a non sequitur. So Simona, do you think, you know, how do we draw the distinction, maybe theoretically, and then, you know, does it apply here? Because personally, I would believe it does apply here. So please.
The short answer is yes. But to provide some commentary, so yes, there is a distinction between what you can call anti-Jewish prejudice and what happens, exactly as you said, in the modern times, anti-Semitism as organized political strategy or movement, let's say. As overall, it does pertain towards certain political forces who look to overtake the power. So if you just look at from that perspective, I would say that it is what's happened in Lithuania is exactly an example of political anti-Semitism, because certain forces and certain people sees at a short path towards power to employ anti-Semitism as a strategy. It is a strategy, sort of a part of larger strategy to create sort of, as I mentioned, to incite fear, to try to look for people, how to sort of make polarize the society, and then the logical conclusions, which already is happening, not in Lithuania, thank God, but in other countries, it leads towards violence. One of the traits of political anti-Semitism is that it's based on well-organized lie. It's not something that can be sort of produced as part of prejudice that different people may have. It's quite understandable, so that some people may be afraid or wary of the things that they don't know. That's just common human nature. But what you would need politics, first of all, the public sphere, the informational channels, and then the legislation power, is to organize that anti-Semitism into ideology, and that it means organizing those the big lies. And so we can see that during during the history, it had many different forms. There is not one form of anti-Semitism. It changed because the societies changed. So if you look at the politically organized sort of anti-Semitism, if the villains are the capitalists, then the Jews were the capitalists, right? They would rule the world. If the evils were identified as communists, then the Jews were communists, right? If there was a nationality was a virtue, then Jews were portrayed as cosmopolitans. It's the same what is happening now. Zionism overall is equated with racism. And then the Jewish people are somehow this colonial power that is not indigenous to the land of Israel. Once again, it's sort of it's not just a prejudice, just a well-organized political strategy and political lie, right? So it varies during the history, looking for the ways how the societies would respond and what they would respond to. So that just indicates how anti-Semitism is actually a political force.
Yeah. But I think also a very big thing here then is the fact that in recent years, with all the sort of new, more advanced techniques with misinformation, informational operations, the deliberate spreading of conspiracy theories, I think also it has found anti-Semitic conspiracy theories have found very fertile ground in this. And they connected well with COVID conspiracy theories, with various sort of issues that Western societies especially are facing economically, demographically. For example, the sort of great replacement theory, the conspiracy theory behind that also has very strong anti-Semitic undertones already, but if it's developed further and you sort of look around what those people are talking about in private, then you find, open anti-Semitism, and not just anti-Semitism, but hate towards Jewish people. And yeah, so this is also, I think, a problem that is connected to also a larger field of problems, Simona.
Yeah, and it sort of, the conclusion of it is that, whatever social ills there are, they are equated with sort of some kind of form that Jews are related to that. And then, anti-Semitism in some perverted way becomes sort of a justified way to fight evil, which is completely bizarre, because then you have a word that meaning is completely inverted. And that's just how those political forces now work. They want to uproot our sense of reality and just to promote the lies that what we see that is happening now.
I think, yeah, Emanuelis, maybe you would like to add something to it. Yeah.
I would like to add a very simple thing, that first time in the history of Lithuania, copyright, you have books on book copyright, but a copyright to become a member of ruling party, copyright of that using anti-Semitism, you can gain major political power was used after, I would like to say, some pre-war minor experiences in Lithuania about that. It was economic anti-Semitism in Lithuania pre-war time, declared not to buy in the Jewish shops. It started in 1933-34, but it never was led after Holocaust and after the Renaissance of Lithuania in 1990, after the Wende time, after the turn, and after the Warsaw Pact was dismantled, Germany united. I remember my visits to Bundestag in 90 in my capacity of head of Foreign Affairs Committee, asking to recognize Lithuania like independent state, and the answer was, let us reunite first Germany, let us dismantle first the Warsaw Pact, and you should stay in the line after that, in the queue. So, but the businesses that first time this copyright to become popular and to grip power using heavy anti-Semitism was successfully implemented. And now everyone in Lithuania now, if you will be anti-Semitic, you will have probably during the elections, you have chance to become a minister, member of parliament, and to be part of the power structures. So, who will dismantle this message? Who will dismantle this message? Constitutional Court decision that is that such people cannot be members of parliament were dismantled by the reality of the elections. Probably you can say that in Germany you have Elon Musk visit to Alternative for Germany and encouraging. That was not only hooliganic but terrible step trying to destroy integrity of the German political culture. But we have good news. You have two ruling coalitions in Germany by Social Democrats and Christian Democrats who are trying to balance and make an Chinese iron curtain against Alternative for Germany, who are the wall against Žemaitaitis party in Lithuania. Who is creating the wall, excluding the remarks from opposition parties? So the ruling coalition parties, I'm sorry, not so much. So in this case, we have only moral possible involvement by our European Union coalition partners. First of all, Germany have solid ground. And it's happened first time. We have two lucky events. First, serious, heavy German presence in Lithuania means now they are like our real neighbors, like it was during 700 years while Memel was our border. Now we feel that Germany is on our border in mentality point of view. And now we are waiting when Germans will bring their reconciliation with the past experience together with fantastic presence of German troops here. We are waiting for the dialogue between Bundestag and Lithuanian parliament and government of Lithuania, what is moral, what is not in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking to exactly to last year's parliamentary election in Lithuania, before that, there was an attempt to have a discussion about the Cordens Sanitaire against Žemaitaitis, but it wasn't shared by all the political parties, and it wasn't even shared by the head of state at the time. Later it was recognized as a mistake, I think, well, softly recognized as a mistake, but still. But we have the moment, we told you so, that you will have problems with this kind of type, but also there's costs, you know, people from foreign embassies, foreign dignitaries visiting Lithuania were all up in arms and saying, are you crazy? If you have this guy in the ruling coalition, you will be out of a lot of things that are existentially important to your country in terms of security, various talks on the EU level and so on. You know, if you're not invited to a room, no one will announce that you're not invited. You just don't know that everyone else is meeting to discuss something. You're just not there. So there are political repercussions, but what I would like to stress is anti-Semitism is not bad because it has political repercussions. It's morally evil, morally corrupt. And so the question that Mr. Zingeris has touched, you know, how do we counter it? And here I look again towards Mr. Strelcovas. You know, what are cultural and education communities are doing in this regard? Of course, this museum and Jewish museums across Europe are doing their best, but also, you know, there's, over the past decades, we had a lot of discourse that exactly through schools and education we should counter not only anti-Semitism as such, but also this question of reconciling with our past, with our history. To some extent, it has been a success. To some extent, it has failed. We have to acknowledge it. But looking from this more cultural perspective, what is the situation now? You know, what are we doing, and what is more that we need to do? What's your perspective on this?
Thank you. I think first of all, I'd like to mention that anti-Semitism rises in democratic states, well, we're talking about political anti-Semitism. We do not have yet, and I hope we'll never will have anti-Semitic policy as official part of policy in this country. But in this case, I would like to, I just remembered Viktor Frankl quote. It sounds like between impulse and response, there is a gap. And in this gap, we have the power of decision. And in this decision lays our freedom. So when people chooses this or another political party during the election, they express their will. It means that some ideas, talks, movements, actions sounds good for them. And the result of the election, what we have today, is, as Emanuelis said already, that 200,000 voted for that. So that was the reflection in time and space that, according to expectations of the people, part of the people of Lithuania, was, well, it was expected. So, and in this case, back to your main question about the cultural field, what museum or educational system or cultural system or different activities can do with that, I think we may talk about many different fields. One of idea was when I was in IRA in London last December. I've noticed that in some countries, for the teachers, for example, there is a obligatory like a courses they have to pass, let's say, to get a knowledge more about anti-Semitism and similar things. We do not have this one. So, and that's why, and I think it's very, very important. Well, in Lithuania, we have formal and non-formal educational system, and it depends very much on teachers' activities. whether teacher thinks she or he should bring school children, students to the museum like this one or not. So in other countries, it is obligatory to visit at least once a year the museum like this one, for example. Again, so it becomes like a part of national security, I would say, because it's very, very important to country to do whatever we can and politics can to stop what we're seeing now. So only the broad cooperation in the same moving toward the same purpose to exclude anti-Semitism from our society or political views. It's the broad cooperation from politics, cultural institutions, educational system, working together. We could, I hope, we could achieve the result. Otherwise, I would be a little bit pessimistic.
But I think also, when we talk about political anti-Semitism and countering it, politically, culturally, from an education point of view, also one of the questions that's very often not talked about in our public sphere and in many places is the experience of Jewish communities. Because, you know, these stereotypes, these conspiracy theories are, you know, disconnected from reality, of course, but people that suffer from them are very real. And again, this distance that is sometimes very abstract political rhetoric, it impacts people's everyday life. You know, I'm not, even on the level, you know, also how they are feeling, you know, when you wake up in the morning and you open the news, and again, anti-Semitic politicians are, you know, on the front page and so on, that probably you're not feeling very well, you're not feeling very safe in your home, in your country. But I think this perspective is also sorely missing in the way we talk about anti-Semitism today, you know, because it's very often, you know, we talk about, you know, negative stereotypes, marginalization, but do we really, as a society, I think, give a face and a voice to our Jewish community to show who they are, to show what they are experiencing? And so I'm looking at both Mr. Zingeris and Dr. Merkinaitė to share some of your insights of, you know, what's the situation now and what can we do to change it, because we need to start changing it, in my beliefs, very soon. Please, Matt.
Sorry for taking first. You should be first. I would like to say that we feel here uncertain. I don't want to say unsafe, but uncertain at least. You have no such events in Latvia, not in Estonia, not in Finland, even with true Finns in Finnish politics, and not even in Poland. So Lithuania became a unique hub for anti-Semitic experience. Unique hub. And what I can say after last week trial and court decision to let be in place Krištaponis sculpture, monument for him, I mean not sculpture, but monument for him in Ukmergė, where you have probably 50% Rimas or 60% of pre-war population, Jewish population, and then you have monument for the guy who one of the leader of Jewish annihilation, especially in Belarus. That was stated by all possible historical entities. And now this struggle ended with humiliation when somebody, probably from genocide center, don't represent in a really true manner with real integrity during the court decision and during the court procedure, present the case of Krištaponis, who was the Krištaponis. And then the decision was that the sculpture, the monument should be in place after Gabrielius Landsbergis, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, sent with Prime Minister Šimonytė sent countless letters to the city mayor to dismantle this monument, small monument, for the memory of one of the leading Holocaust perpetrators. So how you can feel safe with such decisions? I'm in favor of all Lithuanian court decisions, but somebody should apply to the second level of courts. Somebody should be have enough courage to apply. The history of war criminals in Lithuania after liberation of Lithuania from Russian rule were not extremely good. So the history of every court here about every real perpetrator were created, and around that was huge emotional crowds, huge circus created by ethnic nationalist groups during the last 35 years, and how we can feel safe when actually no one real perpetrator. Okay, after 50 years of Soviet censorship, after Soviet Union compromise, fully anti-Nazi deal, and now Putin is again compromising the anti-Nazi stand with his terrible fake expressions about Ukrainians. But real anti-Nazi stand was not created in Lithuania. Anti-Nazi, anti-Soviet, okay, I am part of anti-Soviet anti-Soviet concept and anti-Soviet mentality created in Lithuania. But anti-Nazi stand, Lithuanian anti-Nazi stand, only was mentioned by Balys Sruoga and some Lithuanian intellectuals, distancing themselves from Soviet rule, and of course by righteous people who were so important for us. So in my last resolution, supported by Parliament of Lithuania, mostly unanimously, actually, that was incredible. It was inscripted, enshrined, that the heroes of Vilna ghetto anti-Nazi resistance should become heroes of Lithuanian nation. The heroes of ghetto resistance in Lithuania, those few guys who put their guns against SS and SD troops, and they were making bridge between Warsaw Ghetto resistance group in Vilnius, should become heroes of Lithuania, and the names of their names should become names of the streets and squares in Lithuania. And of course, I would like to repeat, righteous people who were big in number and was stopped to collect. I was here in this museum, Simonas, you know very well, establishing the division in the 90s, division to collect memories about righteous people. And we started only to collect memories about righteous people only 1990. Can you imagine, in Soviet time it was forbidden, in real form forbidden, in the state level forbidden. So we have those numbers of more like 900 guys who become righteous people in Israel, and more like 1,000 with something in the Žuvusiųjų gelbėjimo kryžiumi by the president of Lithuania. And this number should have very big sense for Lithuanian mentality. But we have no at all serious remembrance about righteous people in Lithuania, and they are not primary mentioned in the small towns of Lithuania. So in this case, ghetto heroes, like anti-Nazi resistant Lithuanian righteous people who saved Jewish people, are important to bold and to headline Lithuanian life. And of course, resistance of this copyright to get power through antisemitism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Simona.
So maybe two things to add to what was said here. First, I think that maybe if we look back on how the culture of memory and the politics of remembrance were established, I think along the lines, somewhere we lost the ultimate goal is the truth, right? We wanted to establish, as any society wants to use history in order to sort of promote some kind of collective identity. That usually is in tension with the truth, because there are some hard truths, and Mr. Zingeris referenced that, like collaboration with the Nazi regime, that then becomes an issue that is an interest of very small group of people, because overall you can isolate yourself from the hard truth and the hard questions. So it's just a small group of people who then choose to follow truth as sort of the moral imperative, right? Because at any point, some kind of mythology is just more comfortable, right? So that's one thing, and that's probably our assumption was that if everybody knows the story, everyone will come to the same conclusion that it was evil, right? But that assumption was wrong. It's wrong to make an assumption that when people know, then they will come to the same conclusion. That's also a sort of a failing there. And that's why I think those forces that are now sort of trying to use anti-Semitism in terms of political gain, what we need is to counter in the public sphere and to, as much as possible, to let the societies know that it's not acceptable. Because now they have a license, right? With the rise of anti-Semitic political powers, people feel, maybe those are small fractions in societies, but they emboldened by that. So the more there is in a public sphere that it's still unacceptable, the better. The other thing is that I think probably it's important to talk about the Jewish experiences, but it's also important to talk about Jewish experiences as the citizens of this country. Because a lot of the times the history is told as a history of the Jews, and then it's separated from the history of Lithuania. Especially thinking about how Holocaust happened in those small towns. I mean, you imagine a small town where a third of population is Jewish, right? And one day, those people are gone, right? The entire town stops. So that emptiness, how it affects, it also affects not only Jewish people. And I think we failed a little bit to make that connection. It's the same with the righteous people, right? Because they are sort of like a moral judgment for those people who say that, you know, there was those circumstances we couldn't do anything. Those people who saved Jews during the Holocaust, they show that there was another way, and in some cases and in some form they are quite uncomfortable for the entire society. So sort of to make them also, and they are heroes for the Jewish people now. So to make them the heroes of Lithuania is also something that I think needs to happen.
Thank you. I think it's also the bigger issue that the past has not passed yet. Where, you know, if we look a lot of into these discussions, especially how they are politicized, for example, the case of Krikštaponis and his monument, it is politicized by a very small, very active group for their gains. It also discredits, for example, more generally speaking, Lithuanian national resistance movement, the partisan war after World War II that happened. But what Simona really touched is important is exactly if we would look to the repercussions of history, we would see that, for example, you know, if we would look what happened during World War II here in Lithuania with the Holocaust, with also the Nazi totalitarian regime and its collaborators, what they did to their neighbors, to their, well, common citizens, yes, also the Soviet totalitarian regime, it eroded the sort of social structure and social ties, the social reality that existed. And so we still now feel, if we would travel around Lithuania, if you go to small towns, if you see the destroyed or abandoned synagogues and still places of destroyed or looted Jewish homes, or homes that they used to live in and they don't live there anymore, and this property is no longer theirs or their families or their descendants, if there are any. So if you look at this, you see that the factual repercussions are still felt to this day. It's not just this past hasn't disappeared somehow miraculously. There is somewhere, far away, like medieval times. No, you can still feel it palpably in the reality that surrounds us here, but also in the way that these topics are politicized. It's still a big political problem and a big political issue. So, when we talk about historical memory, it's not just talking about historical memory and the past, it's talking about what kind of society or what kind of country do we want to be. I think now we're failing this exam.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
If possible, only to Simonas should say something about that too. But actually, we're sitting in the house was built by your father. Merkinaitė architect was here in 88, 89, building this pre-war replica, pre-war Vilnius, trying to connect us to authentic pre-war life of empty Vilnius, empty after Holocaust. My point of view is here is I think we have crucial dangers of Lithuania when Russian intelligence will be later bolden like usual in United States, bolden this Žemaitaitis case, and will show Lithuania in most ugly way, and present to the. I was on conservative convention in Washington. A lot of lovely Jewish faces. At the same time, after that, I met Madam Clinton from Democratic side, and a lot of Jewish lovely faces born in Lithuania or grandfather born in Lithuania. If those guys, actually Jewish community not take extremely active part, that I feel guilty extremely against Mr. Žemaitaitis. It was not used all our channels to show how bad become a Lithuanian election period. Well, we don't like to harm in the time when Russians are preparing to the second stage of the war, to harm Lithuanian image in United States and elsewhere. But it's coming the time when our nerve system will be ruined, and Jewish community, and we will start to say what we think about it in the world without any insight of censorship not to harm Lithuanian image. Well, this should be stopped where it's not too late, when this fantastic copyright that anti-Semitic guys declared by Constitutional Court like leading anti-Semites, they are dictating our agenda, should be stopped. In other case, who will stop Russian dirty intelligence, usual tricks in the United States, in Israel, trying to describe and picture Lithuania like collaborators with Nazis. Actually, during Second World War, and what was done by us, by the Commission and the director of International Commission, Ronald here, Račinskas, that in the 2000 with Stu Eisenstadt, who was like a holy father for us, Stu Eisenstadt, leading American diplomats in the 90s, created with Bill Clinton and with President Adamkus International Commission to evaluate Nazi and Soviet crimes, and we produced book after book with top-level German, Joachim Tauber, and Timothy. After that was Timothy Snyder from US side, Israeli Yad Vashem guys, Lithuanian historians. We created the formula about collaboration with Nazis during Second World War. It was adopted. It's become a cornerstone for current Lithuanian liberal society to fight against anti-Semitism. Those books created by Lithuanians, Israelis, Germans, and Americans. So if somebody like to destroy all our homeworks, And I was not extremely happy with last government decision to decline the umbrella for Commission Secretariat. I would like to say that this old building, European building, Lithuania like European state was built by all of us, now is under huge dangers. It's not case in Latvia, not a case in Estonia, not case in Poland, even not a case with all struggle in Germany with all possible neo-fascist groups. But it's a case in Lithuania. So what we will do with that? That's my question. I try to distance myself at all from my APP political belongingness here, making general statement. And looking to old memory, even Brazauskas was making his speech in Knesset, very valuable speech, trying to convince that we reconstructed our trust between Israel and Lithuania about collaboration, kissing in the front of Knesset, the survivors who confronted him in '95. I was there in '95 together with leader of Social Democratic Party. So in this case is a common business of all classical parties of Lithuania and our German friends. I don't know what to say about Americans. I hope they will continue their participation. Well, from United States came the formula, the IRA decision, and the Baker IRA decision about anti-Semitism. That's very important. Just thank you to Canadian Embassy. Canadian Embassy brought to the Parliament 1 week ago the special seminar about how to use for police, for Ministry of Internal Affairs, how to use anti-Semitism and to recognize anti-Semitism and to use the law against that. That's very big homeworks. Only they are partly ruined during last elections. Thank you. And we need to find a way how to be not in this very honorable small group of people, but to become a in vaccination for all nations. Thank you.
And also now looking at the clock is a time for the audience, for your reactions and your questions. There's a microphone here at the center. So if you would like to share some kind of sentiments or ask some kind of questions, our dear participants of these discussions, you're very welcome to. But while you think about your questions, there's just one more question to the director of this museum, is that what Mr. Zingeris was talking about, the vaccination again, yeah, from anti-Semitism and creating this as a again palpable and visible position in our society, which I think is lacking. I think there's a very big question of what our cultural and academic elites are doing in this regard, and you know what you would see the concrete steps that we can take now to move in this direction, please.
In my past, I used to work as a professor of history at university, and I usually, well, having discussions with my students, I always try to explain them that there is a very huge gap between past and the history. It's not the same thing. And, well, as Simona already have mentioned that, well, we know facts, and we thought that if everyone knows the facts, we will come to the same conclusion. It's not working. Because the past and the history are two different things. And, well, we have to talk about the narrative, the historical narrative that has connection and is based as a building on the historical facts. And it's very important to talk about what kind of a narrative, if we're talking about the Holocaust and we're talking about the anti-Semitism, what kind of narrative do we have today in Lithuania? And I think there is a very huge gray zone. Emanuelis Zingeris already informed, and well, we know that as well regarding the Krištaponis. We know Škirpa's case, we know Noreika's case. So what kind of narrative do we have? Do we have a social agreement regarding our past? So if for some part of society, the same person is the hero, and for other part of society the same person is the collaborator. So do we have an agreement? I don't think so. So the homework for academics, for universities, cultural institutions is to try to find out the ways to achieve that agreement. Everyone has plenty of homework. I think the problem is that the academic books are not so popular anymore as in previous times. And the conferences are not so popular as in previous time. So that's the issue. We have to find other forms how to work with society, how to involve the society, especially one thing what makes me optimistic, when I met in the museum the school children, they are completely different from the elder visitors. Well, not completely, let's say they are different from elder visitors that are coming to the museum with already, let's say, with their own mindset, which is based on their experience with on the historical narrative. They were growing up during the Soviet time or the restoration of independence, with all the many issues. However, if we're talking about the young people, they are different. So that makes me kind of optimistic, and probably I would say maybe we will have a bright future.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any questions from the auditorium? No? So then a round of concluding. Okay, yeah, there's a question. Please, sir.
Dear speakers, my name is Maxim and I represent Translative Dialogue Center. It's Ukrainian-based think tank. I was born and raised in Dnipro, a city with deep historical ties to the Jewish community and home to the Menorah Center, one of the most prominent Jewish centers in Ukraine. And since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, we have witnessed a systematic manipulation of historical narratives used to justify aggression and sow division. While such theses have clearly failed to take root here in Lithuania and European countries, however, in the global south there is a risk that these distortions might have better ground, legitimizing Russian aggression under the guise of countering neo-Nazism. And together with democratic partners, and especially with Baltic states, we are doing whatever we can to counter this propaganda. But I would like to ask how to address these challenges more effectively at the global level, as these narratives not only justify aggression, they also pose a direct threat to European countries, as countries who support neo-Nazi and Russian elites as those who are trying to counter neo-Nazism in Europe. Yes. Thank you.
Possible to answer. We sent a letter, official letter by, thank you first of all for being Ukrainian first, you know, and being here with us together today. Slava Ukraini. We sent a letter, official letter some time ago with the chairman of Jewish community, me and Faina, to Kremlin, to this mass killer, Vladimir Putin, to stop to use in name of Jewish survival families, to stop to use the anti-Nazism form for their fake imperial, for the needs of their fake imperial propaganda. Official letter, open letter, published in all American, British newspapers. So it's crystal clear that Russian massive use describing somebody like Nazis are used for their aggressive purpose to take over territories and to compromise those people. They will use the same that against Baltic. That's why the reason why Žemaitaitis case is so important. To annihilate possibility for Lithuania for a Russian imperialist to describe Lithuanians like sympathizers to the Holocaust perpetrators. That is the reason, one of the reasons. First reason is to be simple, normal human beings and normal Europeans. Second reason is counter-Russian propaganda, who will be massively used through their rich assets, intelligence community in the United States and in Germany and in all possible Western circles. That was used, for example, their massive propaganda against Valdas Adamkus, our fantastic president who established this commission for Nazi and Soviet crimes. They said that he participated together with Germans, being 16, 17-year-old. Absolute fake news. Like first chairman of Foreign Affairs in 91, I was stated officially, looking to our archives, that it was fake-rated news. So they're trying to use every occasion. And now the occasion is the war for annihilation of Ukraine. Ukraine culture, Ukraine people, and to establish the Russian Ruski Mir, Russian world. Russian world is a Nazi-type ideology who we should counter. Thank you.
Thank you. Simona, a reaction? No.
We don't have the time for my reaction because there's a lot of reaction there. But overall, it is a strategy that actually anti-Semitic and neo-Nazi forces use, that they sort of try to rationalize whatever they do, that they do in the name of fighting anti-Semitism. And that completely distorts the term anti-Semitism. And instead of being a very concrete either hate or action against the Jewish people, discrimination of Jewish people, it becomes some kind of general term to name whatever you don't like. I mean, it's not lost on any one of us that the president of Ukraine is Jewish, actually. And Mr. Lavrov at some point was sort of questioning whether he's a real Jew. So whoever is in power is sort of has the power to determine who is good Jew, who is bad Jew, who is real Jew and not real Jew. And the really concerning part is that the same is happening in the West. I mean, what's happening in US is that now they are trying to make an assault on the human rights and the right to speak in the name of fighting anti-Semitism. And so us, the Jewish people are at the forefront here, once again, and mostly, though, they have to say not in our name, because in 20 years and in 50 years, the history will look back and say, wow, you see, again, it's because the freedom of right to protest or to speak was annihilated in the name of Jews. I mean, that's just a perverse state of things that we are living in now.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all. I think this is where we will conclude our introductory discussion of this conference. I would like to once again thank our dear Member of Parliament and signatory of the Independence Acts of 1990, March 11th, Mr. Emanuelis Zingeris. I would also like to thank Dr. Simona Merkinaitė, a vocal public intellectual and thinker, and of course, the director of this fantastic museum that is hosting us here today, which I think is also very symbolic, Dr. Simona Strelcovas. My name is Laurinas Peluritis. It was a huge honor to start this, I think, frank and open discussion of the situation that we are in right now. And we will be back after a 30-minute break. So please exchange contacts, mingle, discuss, and in 30 minutes we will have 3 great academic, intellectual, and insightful people, Dr. Akvilė Naudžiūnienė, Dr. Zigmas Vitkus, and Mr. Algis Davidavičius presenting. Thank you.